31 years ago, I was stolen from my crib in the dead of night. 3 years ago, I nearly died in a rain-soaked crash, my body broken, my world shattered. As I lay in a hospital bed, fighting to breathe, I heard the people I called parents, Robert and Elizabeth Harper, walk away, their voices cold as they dismissed my life. They weren't just abandoning me. They were plotting to claim my $4.5 million inheritance. But they didn't know I was listening. They didn't know I'd uncover their lies. And they didn't know about the letter that would change everything. My name is Ava Monroe. I'm 32, a biotech researcher, a painter, and a survivor of a truth so devastating it reshaped my entire existence. I grew up in Brookline, Massachusetts, in a colonial house with manicured hedges and a 2-car garage. Picture perfect from the outside. Robert Harper was a financial advisor with a polished reputation. Elizabeth, a pharmaceutical rep with a smile that charmed everyone. To the world, we were the ideal American family. But beneath the surface, I was their trophy, molded to reflect their ambitions. Piano lessons at 5, science camps at 8, academic competitions by 10. My life was a relentless march toward their vision of perfection. They'd boast at neighborhood barbecues. Ava's special. She'll change the world. But their pride felt like a leash, tightening with every expectation. I loved painting, pouring my soul into abstract colors, but they called it a waste, insisting I pursue science. So I did. I graduated from MIT, built a career in cancer research, and thought I was making them proud. Then, at 29, I inherited $4.5 million from a grandmother I'd never met. Their excitement turned to pressure. Invest with us, they urged, but I chose independence, buying a condo and managing my own wealth. That's when the cracks appeared. They grew distant, their requests for loans incessant. 3 years ago, a car crash on a stormy highway changed everything. I woke up in a hospital, broken, betrayed. Hearing them say I wasn't their daughter. Their betrayal cut deeper than the crash, exposing a lie that had defined my life for 31 years. This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's a story of truth clawing its way to the surface, of a woman who lost everything and found herself in the wreckage. For 31 years, I lived a lie, believing Robert and Elizabeth Harper were my parents. I was Ava Harper, their only daughter, shaped by their rules, their dreams, their control. But that night in the hospital, their words, "She's not our real daughter," shattered the illusion. They didn't just abandon me as I lay dying. They saw my pain as an opportunity to seize my inheritance, to secure their escape from debts and failed ventures. What they didn't expect was my survival or my fight. With the help of my best friend Natalie, a nurse named Evelyn, a private investigator, and a lawyer, I uncovered the truth. I wasn't Ava Harper. I was Ava Monroe, stolen from my crib in Providence, Rhode Island, on May 12, 1994. My real parents, Thomas and Catherine Monroe, had spent 3 decades searching for me, never giving up hope. The Harpers had built their lives on a crime, raising me not out of love, but as an investment, a pawn in their financial schemes. When they realized I might die, they pivoted to claim my estate. But I fought back. I left a letter in a safe deposit box. A letter that exposed their crimes, their greed, their plan to flee to Indonesia with my money. That letter brought them to justice, but it also gave me something more: freedom. This story is about the crash that broke my body, the betrayal that broke my heart, and the truth that set me free. It's about finding my real family, reclaiming my identity, and turning pain into purpose through the Ava Monroe Foundation. If you've ever felt lost, betrayed, or like your past was a lie, this story is for you. It's proof that no matter how deep the deception, truth has a gravity of its own, pulling you back to who you were meant to be. Stay with me for the next hour as I take you through a journey that changed my life forever. You'll hear how I uncovered a 31-year lie, confronted the people who raised me, and found the family who never stopped searching. This isn't just my story. It's a testament to survival, to the strength we find when everything we know crumbles. If you've ever faced betrayal, questioned your identity, or fought to rebuild, I want you to know you're not alone. Hit that subscribe button to join me on this journey, and share your own story in the comments below. Your words could inspire someone else. Together, we can shine a light on the truth and support the Ava Monroe Foundation, which helps families of missing children and survivors like me. Visit our website to learn how you can get involved, whether through a donation or sharing our mission. Every step you take with me is a step toward healing for yourself and others. Let's remind the world that no truth stays buried forever. Subscribe now, leave a comment, and let's keep this conversation going. Thank you for being here. Your presence means more than you know. Picture a quiet street in Brookline, Massachusetts, lined with colonial homes, their lawns clipped to perfection, their windows glowing with the warmth of suburban dreams. That's where I grew up, in a house that could have graced a magazine cover. A two-car garage held my father's Mercedes and my mother's Audi, symbols of a life carefully curated for the world to admire. Robert Harper was a financial advisor, his name synonymous with trust in our community. Elizabeth Harper, a pharmaceutical rep, moved through charity galas and school fundraisers with a smile that disarmed everyone. To our neighbors, we were the epitome of the American family. Successful, polished, enviable. I was their only child, Ava Harper, the golden girl destined to carry their legacy. From the age of 5, my days were a whirlwind of structure. Piano lessons, ballet classes, spelling bees. By 8, I was shipped off to summer math camps, my suitcase packed with textbooks instead of toys. Science fairs became my battlegrounds, where I earned trophies to line our mantle. Robert and Elizabeth never missed a chance to showcase my achievements. At neighborhood barbecues, they'd beam, saying, "Ava's special. She's going to change the world someday." Their words sounded like love, but they carried a weight I couldn't name. Every A+ was expected, every triumph a stepping stone to their vision of my future. I remember the pride in their eyes when I won a regional science competition at 10, but it wasn't just pride, it was possession. I was their project, a reflection of their ambition. They enrolled me in advanced biology workshops while my friends splashed at the community pool. "Harpers don't settle for average," Robert would say, his voice firm, his expectations unyielding. Elizabeth would nod, adding, "We've given you every opportunity, Ava. Don't waste them." Their devotion seemed absolute, but it came with a price. I learned early to suppress my own desires, to mold myself into the daughter they demanded. My childhood wasn't mine. It was theirs, a carefully orchestrated performance for an audience of their peers. Yet, even as a child, I sensed something off, a dissonance beneath our perfect facade. The house was too quiet at night, the smiles too practiced. I was their pride and joy, but I felt like a trophy, polished and displayed, never truly seen. That life in Brookline shaped me, but it also planted the first seeds of doubt, whispering that the truth was waiting to be uncovered. As I grew older, the cracks in our perfect life began to show, subtle at first, like hairline fractures in glass. I was 12 when I noticed we had no baby pictures of me. Our family albums were filled with photos from age 3 onward. Me at preschool, me with my first bike, me in a frilly dress at a cousin's wedding, but nothing earlier. Curious, I asked Elizabeth about it one evening, flipping through an album by the fireplace. She hesitated, her smile tightening before saying, "Oh, Ava, those were lost in a basement flood before we moved to Brookline." Her answer seemed plausible, so I let it go, but a small knot formed in my chest. Other oddities piled up over the years. My auburn hair and green eyes stood out starkly against Robert's dark hair and Elizabeth's blue-gray gaze. In high school biology, we studied genetics, and I asked them why I looked so different. "You take after my mother," Elizabeth said quickly, claiming I inherited my features from a grandmother who died before I was born. I wanted to believe her, but their answers felt rehearsed, like lines from a script they'd memorized. Then there was my birth certificate. At 16, I needed it for my driver's license, and when Elizabeth handed it to me, it looked pristine, the paper too crisp for a document supposedly issued in 1994. I mentioned it casually, and her face paled before she laughed it off, saying they'd requested a fresh copy. Another knot tightened in my chest. Blood work for a sports physical made Elizabeth oddly emotional, her eyes glistening as she hugged me afterward, whispering, "You're so healthy, Ava." Robert dodged my questions about ancestry DNA tests when they became popular, calling them a fad for people with too much time. His dismissal was sharp, almost angry, and it lingered in my mind. These moments were fleeting, easy to dismiss as a child, but they stacked up like evidence in a case I didn't yet know I was building. I loved Robert and Elizabeth. They were my parents, the only family I knew, but their reactions felt like walls, keeping something from me. I started noticing how they changed the subject when I asked about our family history, how their stories about my early years were vague, lacking the vivid details other parents shared. By my teens, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was a puzzle piece forced into the wrong picture. Those doubts were my first rebellion, quiet but persistent, urging me to question the life they'd built around me. The pressure to excel defined my teenage years, a constant hum beneath every choice I made. Robert and Elizabeth had a mantra: Harpers don't settle for average. AB+ was met with a raised eyebrow, a silent rebuke that stung more than words. "We've invested too much in you," Elizabeth would say, her voice soft but laced with expectation. That word, invested, felt like a contract I hadn't signed. They pushed me towards science, praising my aptitude for biology, envisioning a career that would bring prestige to our name. But my heart was elsewhere. I found solace in painting, losing myself in abstract swirls of color that let me escape the rigidity of my life. Late at night, I'd sneak into the attic with a canvas, brushing reds and blues into shapes that felt like freedom. Painting was my rebellion, my secret world where I wasn't Ava Harper, the prodigy, but just Ava. At 17, I dared to mention studying fine arts in college. The reaction was swift and brutal. Robert's face hardened, his voice cutting. "Art is a hobby, not a future. You're meant for more." Elizabeth cried, clutching my hand, saying, "You can't throw away everything we've worked for." Their response was so extreme, so visceral, that I backed down, burying my dream. I applied to MIT, majoring in biochemistry, a path that pleased them but left me hollow. I excelled, of course, I'd been trained to, but every lab report, every exam felt like another brick in their wall around me. In my sophomore year, I took a secret art class, hiding my sketches under my bed. One day, Elizabeth found them and tore a canvas in half, her eyes blazing. "This won't secure our future, Ava," she said, the word "our" chilling me. I stopped painting for years, convincing myself science was enough. But even as I built a career in cancer research, publishing papers, earning grants, a part of me mourned the colors I'd left behind. The pressure wasn't just academic, it was emotional. Robert and Elizabeth's love felt conditional, tied to my achievements. They'd hug me after a success, but their embraces were brief, their praise always followed by "what's next?" I craved their approval, yet it slipped through my fingers, leaving me chasing a standard I could never meet. That pressure shaped me into a woman who doubted her own desires, who believed her worth lay in what she could do for others. But those suppressed dreams, those torn canvases, were sparks waiting to ignite, fueling a quiet resolve to find my own truth. By my mid-20s, the tension in our family was a low, constant simmer, ready to boil over. I was 29 when I received a $4.5 million inheritance from a grandmother I'd never met, a woman Elizabeth claimed had adored me from afar. The money changed everything. Robert and Elizabeth's eyes lit up when they heard the sum, their voices eager as they urged me to invest through Robert's firm. "We'll take care of it, Ava," Robert said, his smile too wide. It's what family does. But something in their insistence felt wrong, like a predator circling. I trusted my instincts, choosing an independent financial advisor and buying a modest condo in Cambridge. Robert was furious, his voice cold as he accused me of distrust. "After everything we've done for you," he said, leaving the sentence hanging like a threat. Elizabeth called daily, pitching vague investment opportunities. A restaurant, a real estate deal, a tech startup, each one needing just a small loan. I refused, and their warmth faded, replaced by clipped conversations and pointed silences. Holidays became strained, their smiles forced as they toasted my success but avoided my eyes. Yet I still visited, still called, clinging to the idea of family, even as it unraveled. The word invested echoed in my mind, a clue I couldn't ignore. One night, I found an old letter in Elizabeth's desk, written to Robert years earlier. "She's our ticket out of this mess." My heart raced as I tucked it away, unsure what it meant but certain it wasn't love. I started noticing other signs. Robert's late-night calls with unknown contacts, Elizabeth's nervous glances when I asked about my childhood. They were hiding something, and it wasn't just money. I began locking my financial accounts, sensing their desperation. At a family dinner, Robert mentioned my inheritance again, his tone casual but probing. "You should secure it properly, Ava. For all of us." The word us sent a chill down my spine. I loved them despite their flaws, but trust was eroding. I kept the letter hidden, my doubts growing like shadows. I was their daughter, wasn't I? Why did their love feel like a transaction? Those questions gnawed at me, a quiet rebellion against the life they'd built. I didn't know it then, but I was already searching for the truth, piecing together a puzzle that would lead to a devastating revelation. The tension wasn't just in our family. It was in me, a battle between loyalty and instinct, love and suspicion. That simmering unease would soon explode, tearing apart the only life I'd ever known and revealing a truth buried for 31 years. At 29, my life took a turn I never saw coming. A lawyer's letter arrived, informing me I'd inherited $4.5 million from a grandmother I'd never met, a woman Elizabeth claimed had loved me from a distance but was too frail to visit. The sum was staggering, a fortune that felt like both a blessing and a burden. Robert and Elizabeth's reaction was immediate, their eyes gleaming with an intensity I'd never seen. "This is a game changer, Ava," Robert said, his voice smooth but urgent. "We can secure your future, our future." Elizabeth chimed in, her smile wide, suggesting I invest the money through Robert's financial firm. "It's what family does," she said, her hand squeezing mine a little too tightly. Their excitement was palpable, but it didn't feel like joy. It felt like hunger. I was uneasy, my instincts whispering caution. I'd spent years under their control, molded into their vision of success. But this was different. This was my money, my choice. Against their insistence, I hired an independent financial advisor, a decision that felt like my first real act of defiance. With her guidance, I bought a modest condo in Cambridge, a cozy space with high ceilings and windows that let in the morning light. I invested the rest conservatively, building a nest egg for a future I wanted to define. Robert and Elizabeth were livid. "You're being reckless," Robert snapped, his face flushed. "We know what's best." Elizabeth's tone was softer but no less pointed. "We've always looked out for you, Ava. Why shut us out now?" Their anger caught me off guard, but I stood firm, sensing something deeper in their reaction. The inheritance wasn't just money to them. It was leverage, a prize they'd been waiting for. I started noticing subtle shifts. Robert's late-night calls grew more frequent. His voice hushed as he spoke to unknown contacts. Elizabeth began dropping hints about their financial struggles, a failed real estate deal, a dip in Robert's client base. Their desperation was cloaked in concern, but it was there, simmering beneath their polished exterior. One evening, I found an email Robert had sent to himself by mistake, a single line that chilled me. "She's our biggest asset. We can't lose control." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding, unsure what it meant but certain it wasn't love. That email was the first crack in the dam, a warning that the life I'd known was built on something darker than I'd ever imagined. My refusal to hand over the inheritance drove a wedge between us, splintering the fragile facade of our family. Robert's anger became a constant undercurrent, his once proud smiles replaced by curt nods and pointed silences. Elizabeth's warmth faded, her calls now laced with guilt trips and thinly veiled demands. "We need your help, Ava," she'd say, pitching vague ventures. A waterfront restaurant, a tech startup, a condo flip. Each idea was just a small loan, but the sums she mentioned grew bolder, her voice trembling with urgency. I said no every time, my resolve hardening even as guilt gnawed at me. They were my parents, the people who'd raised me, yet their love felt transactional, tied to what I could give them. Holidays became battlegrounds. At Thanksgiving, Robert raised a glass to family unity, but his eyes avoided mine. Elizabeth pressed me about the inheritance over pumpkin pie, her tone casual but probing. "Have you thought about diversifying with us? It's safer." I deflected, but the air was thick with tension. Christmas was worse. Robert barely spoke, and Elizabeth's gifts came with notes hinting at their tough times. I still visited, still called, clinging to the idea of family, but each interaction left me emptier. Their desperation was palpable, their charm unraveling. Robert started mentioning my condo, suggesting I sell it to free up capital for us all. The word "us" sent a shiver down my spine, echoing that chilling email. One night, I overheard him on the phone, his voice low. "If she doesn't cooperate, we'll find another way." My breath caught, my hands trembling as I backed away from the door. I started locking my financial accounts, changing passwords, and moving assets to safer trusts. Elizabeth noticed, her eyes narrowing when I mentioned my advisor. "You don't trust us," she accused, tears welling up. I wanted to deny it, to bridge the growing chasm, but I couldn't ignore the truth. I didn't. Their love, once a constant, now felt like a performance, staged to keep me in line. I began digging deeper, driven by a need to understand. I found a bank statement buried in Robert's office, showing massive withdrawals to offshore accounts I didn't recognize. Elizabeth's nervous laughter when I asked about my childhood grew more strained, her stories vaguer. The rifts weren't just financial, they were emotional, a slow unraveling of the bond I'd once cherished. I was their daughter, but I felt like a means to an end, a pawn in a game I hadn't agreed to play. Those cracks in our family widened, exposing a truth I wasn't ready to face but could no longer ignore. By 30, doubt had taken root, a quiet but relentless force eroding the foundation of my life. I loved Robert and Elizabeth, despite their flaws, but trust was a casualty of their greed. That word, invested, haunted me, a reminder of their mantra, now twisted into something sinister. I couldn't shake the feeling that their love was a facade, built on a secret I wasn't meant to uncover. I started journaling, pouring my suspicions onto pages I hid under my mattress. "Am I paranoid?" I wrote. "Or are they hiding something bigger than money?" The question kept me awake, a puzzle I couldn't solve but couldn't abandon. I noticed patterns. Robert's cryptic emails, Elizabeth's evasive answers about my early years. I asked about our family tree once, hoping for clarity, but Robert changed the subject, his jaw tight. Elizabeth's stories about my infancy were inconsistent. One day I was born in Boston. Another, it was a small town upstate. Their lies were small but cumulative, stacking up like evidence. I found a locked box in their attic, its weight heavy with possibility, but I didn't dare open it, afraid of what I'd find. Instead, I kept digging, my instincts sharper. I overheard Elizabeth whisper to Robert about the plan, her voice tense. "A plan." I wondered, my heart racing. I started cross-checking their stories, searching public records for my birth, but found nothing. The absence was louder than any proof. I was still their daughter in name, still showed up for Sunday dinners, but my loyalty was fraying. I felt like a detective in my own life, piecing together clues that pointed to a truth I feared. Robert's insistence on managing my inheritance wasn't just greed. It was control, a need to keep me tethered. Elizabeth's tears weren't for me. They were for a failing scheme. I didn't know what they were hiding, but I knew it was big, a secret that had shaped my entire existence. Those doubts became my compass, guiding me toward a reckoning I couldn't yet see but felt in my bones. The truth was out there, waiting, and I was ready to chase it, no matter the cost. It was a stormy November night in 2022, the kind where rain hammers the windshield and the world blurs into streaks of light. I was 31, driving back to Boston from a biotech conference in New York, my mind buzzing with new research ideas. The highway was slick, my GPS promising I'd be home in an hour. I adjusted the radio, searching for a signal through the static, when a blinding flash of headlights swerved into my lane. Time slowed, my hands gripping the wheel, my heart lurching as I yanked it left. Then impact. A sickening crunch of metal, glass shattering like a scream, and my world spun into darkness. Pain exploded everywhere, a wildfire tearing through my body. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, my thoughts fragmenting into panic. Was I dying? The rain kept falling, a relentless drumbeat against the wreckage of my car. I don't know how long I was out, but I woke to the wail of sirens, red and blue lights pulsing through the haze. Paramedics' voices were distant, urgent, shouting about internal bleeding and broken bones. They cut me from the car, my body limp, my mind slipping in and out. In the ambulance I felt cold, so cold like life was draining away. I thought of Robert and Elizabeth, my parents, wondering if they'd come, if they'd hold my hand. At the hospital I was a broken puzzle. Fractured femur, shattered pelvis, ruptured spleen. Tubes snaked into my throat, machines beeping a fragile rhythm. I couldn't speak, couldn't open my eyes fully, trapped in a body that felt like a prison. The pain was relentless, but worse was the fear, a gnawing dread that this was the end. I clung to memories of my condo in Cambridge, my lab, my paints hidden in a closet, willing myself to survive. Nurses whispered about my condition, their words floating through the fog. Critical, surgery needed, next of kin. I heard someone call Robert and Elizabeth, their names a lifeline in my haze. They were coming, I told myself. They had to. They were my parents, the ones who'd raised me, pushed me, loved me in their own way. I pictured Elizabeth's worried face, Robert's steady voice, anchoring me back to life. But as hours passed, the hospital grew quieter, the machines louder, and a new fear took hold. Where were they? Why hadn't they come? I didn't know then that the answer would shatter everything I believed about them, about family, about myself. That night, the crash didn't just break my body. It set me on a collision course with a truth buried for 31 years, a truth that would unravel the life I'd known and force me to confront the people I called Mom and Dad. The rain kept falling, and I kept fighting, unaware that the worst was yet to come. As I lay in that hospital bed, tethered to life by tubes and monitors, I was barely conscious, my world a haze of pain and fear. But some moments cut through the fog, sharp as a blade. It was late, maybe midnight, when I heard their voices, Robert and Elizabeth, my parents, standing just outside my room. Their presence was a flicker of hope, a tether to the world I was slipping away from. I couldn't move, couldn't call out, but I strained to listen, desperate for their comfort. Instead, their words were a knife to my heart. The doctor's voice was urgent, explaining I needed immediate surgery to stop the internal bleeding, that without it, I wouldn't survive the night. "You're her parents," he said. "We need your consent now." Robert's reply was cold, deliberate, like he was discussing a business deal. "She's not our real daughter," he said. "Her estate should cover this. Let her decide when she wakes up." Elizabeth's voice followed, softer but no less cruel. "She's an adult now. It's her responsibility." I felt my chest tighten, not from the injuries but from the weight of their words. Not their real daughter. Estate. The words echoed, surreal, impossible. They were my parents, the ones who'd cheered at my science fairs, framed my MIT diploma, called me their pride and joy. Yet here they were, dismissing my life as if I were a stranger, a liability. I heard the doctor protest, his voice rising, but Robert cut him off. "We're not signing anything. She's on her own." Footsteps followed, receding down the hall, their absence louder than any sound. They were gone. They'd walked away, leaving me to die. The betrayal was a physical pain, deeper than the fractures in my bones, sharper than the tubes in my throat. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I was trapped, my body failing, my mind reeling. Their words replayed, each syllable a wound. Not their real daughter. Estate. They weren't just abandoning me. They were calculating, eyeing the $4.5 million inheritance I'd received 2 years earlier. I saw it clearly then, through the haze. I wasn't their child to them. I was an asset, a means to an end. And now, with death looming, they saw a chance to claim what they'd always wanted. The realization was a gut punch, stealing what little breath I had. I'd spent 31 years loving them, chasing their approval, believing their lies. Every piano lesson, every science camp, every "we're so proud" felt tainted, a performance to keep me in their grip. As the monitors beeped and the pain surged, I felt something else ignite, a spark of rage, a will to survive, not for them but for me. They thought they could erase me, but I wasn't done. Their betrayal was the end of one life, but it was also the beginning of another, one where I'd fight for the truth they'd buried. In that hospital bed, with Robert and Elizabeth's betrayal ringing in my ears, I was teetering on the edge of life, my body broken, my heart shattered. The doctor's voice faded, replaced by the steady beep of machines, a cruel reminder that time was running out. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, but inside I was screaming, fighting to hold on. That's when Evelyn Ward, a nurse with gray-streaked hair and a voice like a warm blanket, became my lifeline. She'd been in my room earlier, adjusting my four, her eyes kind but weary from a long shift. Now she was back, her brow furrowed as she overheard the doctor's argument with my parents. "They left?" she asked, her tone sharp with disbelief. The doctor confirmed it, his voice heavy with frustration. Evelyn didn't hesitate. She pulled my chart, scanning for emergency contacts, and found Natalie Brooks, my best friend since our MIT days. "I'm calling her," Evelyn said, her voice firm. "This girl needs someone." Natalie was in Boston, an hour away, but she dropped everything, racing through the rain to reach me. I didn't know it then, trapped in my haze, but Evelyn's decision saved my life. Natalie arrived, her face pale, her eyes red from tears, but her resolve unbreakable. "She's family," Natalie told the doctor, her voice trembling but certain. "I'll sign the papers. Do whatever it takes." The doctor explained the risks. Multiple surgeries, weeks in ICU, a long recovery, but Natalie didn't flinch. "She's a fighter," she said. "She'll make it." They wheeled me into the operating room, Natalie's hand squeezing mine until the anesthesia took hold. I don't remember the surgeries, the hours under the knife, the blood transfusions that kept me alive. But I remember waking days later to Natalie's voice, soft and steady, reading from a worn copy of The Great Gatsby. My eyes fluttered open, the world too bright, too loud, but her presence was an anchor. "You're back," she whispered, her smile breaking through tears. "I knew you'd come back." Evelyn was there too, checking my chart, her eyes crinkling with relief. "You've got a strong spirit, Ava," she said, "and good people in your corner." Those words stayed with me, a balm for the wounds Robert and Elizabeth had left. Natalie told me everything. How my parents had refused to sign, how Evelyn had pushed to find her, how close I'd come to slipping away. The truth was brutal, but Natalie's presence softened it. She stayed by my side through weeks in the ICU, bringing me soup, playing my favorite jazz playlists, reminding me who I was when I felt like nothing. Evelyn checked on me daily, her quiet strength a constant. "You're not alone," she'd say, adjusting my pillows. "You've got us." Their kindness rebuilt me, piece by piece, when my parents' betrayal had torn me apart. I learned more as I recovered. Natalie had called my lab colleagues, who sent flowers and cards, their support a reminder of the life I'd built beyond the Harpers. My physical pain was immense. Learning to walk again was a battle of inches, but the emotional pain was worse. Robert and Elizabeth never called, never visited, their absence a confirmation of their betrayal. I replayed their words, "Not our real daughter," until they became a mantra, fueling my determination. Who was I, if not their daughter? The question haunted me, but it also drove me. Natalie and Evelyn weren't just my saviors. They were my family, chosen not by blood but by love. As I lay in that hospital, my body healing but my world in ruins, I made a silent vow. I'd survive, not for Robert and Elizabeth, but for me. I'd find the truth they'd hidden, the identity they'd stolen. Their betrayal was a wound, but it was also a spark, igniting a fire that would lead me to a letter, a family, and a life I'd never imagined. Natalie and Evelyn gave me the strength to keep going, to chase a truth that would change everything. The hospital room was my battleground, my body still mending from the crash, but my mind was racing, fueled by the sting of Robert and Elizabeth Harper's betrayal. Their words, "Not our real daughter," had shattered the illusion of my life, and I needed to know why. As soon as I could hold a laptop, I begged Natalie, my rock and best friend, to bring it to me. Propped up against pillows, for lines tugging at my skin, I started digging. First, I scoured public records for my birth certificate, the one Elizabeth had handed me at 16, its crisp paper too perfect for 1994. I found no trace of Ava Harper born in Boston, or anywhere else. My heart pounded. This wasn't a clerical error. It was a deliberate lie. I turned to news archives, typing "missing child 1994", on a whim, my fingers trembling. A headline from the Providence Journal froze me. 3-month-old Ava Monroe abducted May 15, 1994, from Providence, Rhode Island. The article described a baby girl, taken from her crib during a family gathering, her parents, Thomas and Maria Monroe, left in agony. There was a grainy photo of the infant, her auburn curls unmistakable. I stared, my breath shallow. She had my hair, my eyes. Was this me? The thought was too big, too impossible, but it took hold, a seed of truth I couldn't uproot. I cross-checked details, the date, the place, the timeline. I was 3 months old when the Harpers moved to Brookline, their story of my early years always vague. I remembered Elizabeth's nervous laugh when I'd asked about my infancy, Robert's sharp dismissal of DNA tests. The pieces fit too well. I confided in Natalie, my voice cracking as I showed her the article. "What if I'm not theirs?" I whispered. Her eyes widened, but she nodded, fierce. "We'll find out," she said. She started searching too, pulling up old missing persons databases, her laptop glowing beside mine. We found a follow-up story from 1995. The Monroes had never stopped searching, offering rewards, their lives frozen in grief. I felt a pang not just for them but for me, for the life I might have lost. My body ached, but my resolve was stronger. I needed answers not just for the Harpers but for myself. Who was Ava Monroe? Why had they done this? The hospital's Wi-Fi flickered, my strength waned, but I kept going, driven by a need to know. I jotted down contacts, investigators, reporters, my hands shaking with each note. Natalie stayed late, her presence a lifeline. "You're not alone in this," she said. I wasn't sure I believed her yet, but I clung to her words. The truth was out there, buried under 31 years of lies, and I was ready to unearth it, no matter how much it hurt. The suspicion that I was Ava Monroe consumed me, but suspicion wasn't proof. I needed facts, something undeniable to anchor the chaos in my head. Still in the hospital, my recovery slow and grueling, I reached out to Lucas Hayes, a private investigator Natalie knew from a legal case. Over a grainy video call, I poured out my story. The crash, the Harper's betrayal, the Providence article. Lucas's face was all business, but his eyes softened. "Let's get DNA," he said. "That's the only way to know." I agreed, though the idea terrified me. What if I was wrong? What if I was right? Lucas moved fast. He and Natalie devised a plan to collect DNA from the Harpers without tipping them off. Natalie visited their Brookline home under the guise of picking up my mail, slipping a used coffee mug from Robert and a hairbrush from Elizabeth into her bag. My heart raced as she described it, her voice low over the phone. "I felt like a spy," she admitted, but her resolve matched mine. Lucas sent the samples to a private lab, along with my own, taken from a cheek swab I managed despite my injuries. The wait was torture. 10 days of pain, doubt, my nights haunted by dreams of a crib I didn't remember. I kept the Providence article by my bedside, the baby's face blurring with my own. When the results came, Lucas called me directly. "Ava," he said, his voice steady, "you're not related to Robert or Elizabeth Harper." 0% match. My chest tightened, but he wasn't done. "We cross-referenced your DNA with a missing persons database. You're a 99.9% match for Ava Monroe, daughter of Thomas and Maria Monroe." The words hit like a thunderbolt, splitting my world in two. I was Ava Monroe, stolen, raised on a crime, my life a lie. Tears streamed down my face, relief and grief colliding. Natalie was there, holding my hand, her eyes wet too. "You found your truth," she whispered. But the truth was only half the battle. I dug deeper, finding Elizabeth's old journal in a box Natalie retrieved from my condo. One entry, dated 1995, read, "The child from Providence is ours now. Our chance to start over." My hands shook as I read it, the words a confession in her own hand. I wasn't a daughter. I was a transaction, a stolen prize to secure their future. The Harpers had built their whole lives around me, not out of love but out of greed. Lucas confirmed more. Their financial records showed unexplained deposits around 1994, likely tied to my abduction. I felt sick, my love for them curdling into betrayal. But I also felt a spark of hope, a connection to the Monroes who'd never stopped searching. I wasn't ready to contact them yet, my wounds too raw, but their existence gave me strength. The DNA test wasn't just proof. It was a key, unlocking a past I'd been denied and a future I'd have to fight for. With the truth branding me Ava Monroe, my focus turned to the Harpers, whose betrayal in the hospital bed was only the tip of their deception. They weren't just liars, they were criminals, and I needed to know what they were planning next. Lucas Hayes, my investigator, became my eyes and ears, diving into their lives with a tenacity that matched my growing anger. He uncovered a trail of financial ruin. Robert's investment firm was crumbling under bad loans, their Brookline home was mortgaged to the hilt, and they owed millions to creditors. The $4.5 million inheritance I'd received was their lifeline, and my survival had thrown a wrench in their plans. But they weren't giving up. Lucas hacked into their emails, finding correspondence with an offshore bank in the Cayman Islands. Robert had written, "Once we secure the funds, we're out." My stomach churned as Lucas dug deeper, revealing their scheme. They'd booked one-way tickets to Indonesia, set to leave in 2 weeks. Indonesia, a place they'd never mentioned, a country with no extradition treaty with the US. They were planning to vanish, my money in their pockets. My life discarded like an old receipt. Lucas found more. A meeting with a shady identity broker, a man known for forging passports and driver's licenses. The Harpers were erasing themselves, building new lives on the ashes of mine. I listened to Lucas's updates, my hospital bed a war room, my body weak but my mind sharp. Natalie sat beside me, her jaw set tight as we pieced it together. "They thought you'd die," she said, her voice hard. "When you didn't, they pivoted." I nodded, remembering their hospital visit, their cold dismissal of my surgery. They'd seen me as a loose end, a threat to their escape. But I was awake now, and I wasn't letting them slip away. Lucas tapped a burner phone Robert used, catching a call with the broker. "She's still in recovery," Robert said, his voice clipped. "Once we have her money, she's irrelevant." Irrelevant. The word seared me, fueling a rage that drowned out my pain. Natalie recorded it, her hands steady, her eyes meeting mine. "We've got them," she said. I found more evidence in my own files. A bank statement I'd copied from Robert's office years ago, showing transfers to an account I didn't recognize, dated just after my inheritance. It was proof they'd been siphoning funds, testing the waters. Elizabeth's journal, with its chilling entry about the child from Providence, was another piece, a confession tying them to my abduction. Every discovery was a wound, stripping away the parents I'd loved, revealing predators who'd raised me for profit. Lucas tracked their movements, late-night trips to a storage unit, likely stashing cash or documents. He found a lease for a rental car under an alias, a detail meant to vanish with them. The Harpers were meticulous, their plan airtight, but they'd underestimated me. I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was their reckoning, armed with a truth they couldn't outrun. As I lay in the hospital, my body knitting itself back together, I felt a clarity I'd never known. The Harpers thought they could steal my life twice. First by taking me, then by taking my money and fleeing. But I was steps ahead, my pain forging a resolve they couldn't break. Natalie and Lucas were my allies, their loyalty a shield against the Harpers' greed. I began to think about a trap, a way to confront their lies head-on. The idea of a letter took shape, a letter that would expose their crimes, their betrayal, their plan to disappear. It would be my weapon, left where they'd least expect it, a final act to reclaim the life they'd stolen. The Harpers were running, but I was chasing, and the truth was closing in, relentless, unstoppable, ready to bring them down. The truth had set me free, but it also set me on fire. I was Ava Monroe, stolen at 3 months old, raised by Robert and Elizabeth Harper not out of love, but as a pawn in their twisted game. Now, knowing they planned to flee to Indonesia with my $4.5 million inheritance, I wasn't just healing in that hospital bed. I was plotting. Their betrayal, leaving me to die, dismissing me as not their real daughter, had forged a resolve harder than the steel pins in my fractured bones. I wanted justice, not revenge, and I knew it had to be airtight. With Natalie by my side and Lucas Hayes, my private investigator, feeding me updates, we crafted a plan. The centerpiece was a letter, a document that would expose their crimes and lure them into a trap. I wrote it in secret, my hands trembling with rage and purpose, detailing everything. Their abduction of me in 1994, their financial ruin, their scheme to steal my inheritance, their flight to Indonesia. I included evidence. Elizabeth's journal entry about the child from Providence, the bank statement with offshore transfers, the burner phone call where Robert called me irrelevant. Every word was a weapon, precise and undeniable. But the letter wasn't just a confession, it was bait. We'd place it in a safe deposit box at my bank, the one they'd been pressuring me to access. Lucas suggested we leak just enough to make them think I was still weak, unaware of their plans. Natalie would call Elizabeth, pretending to be frantic, saying I'd left a dangerous document in the box but was too injured to retrieve it. The Harpers, desperate to cover their tracks, would rush to get it, believing they could destroy the evidence and secure my estate. Lucas coordinated with a lawyer, Sophia Chen, who specialized in fraud cases. She ensured the letter was notarized, copies sent to law enforcement, and the original locked in the box under my name, accessible only with my key, or crucially by my next of kin if I died. The trap hinged on their greed. They'd try to claim the box, thinking I was out of the picture. Lucas also tipped off the FBI, using his contacts to flag the Harpers' aliases and travel plans. Every detail was meticulous. Fake hospital updates to lull them into complacency, surveillance on their Brookline home, even a decoy key Natalie accidentally left at their house. My body was weak, my recovery grueling, but my mind was sharp, fueled by 31 years of lies. Natalie held my hand as we finalized the plan, her eyes fierce. "They're going down," she said. I nodded, the letter my lifeline, my voice when I had none. It wasn't just for me. It was for the Monroes, my real parents, and for the life they stole. The trap was set, and the Harpers were walking right into it. The plan was in motion, and the Harpers took the bait faster than I'd dared hope. Natalie made the call from the hospital, her voice shaking with feigned panic as she spoke to Elizabeth. "Ava's not doing well," she lied, her words carefully scripted. "She's been raving about some letter in her safe deposit box, something about you and Robert. I'm worried she's losing it." Elizabeth's response was a sharp intake of breath, followed by a too calm, "What kind of letter?" Natalie played her part perfectly, stammering, "I don't know, but she said it's dangerous. She's too weak to get it herself." The seed was planted, and within hours, Lucas reported movement. Robert and Elizabeth were frantic, their burner phone buzzing with calls to their identity broker. "We need those passports now," Robert snapped in an intercepted call, his voice tight. They thought the letter was a loose end, a threat to their escape to Indonesia, and they weren't wrong. Lucas's surveillance caught them leaving their Brookline home at dawn, driving a rental car under an alias, heading to my bank in Boston. They carried forged documents, claiming to be my next of kin, banking on my supposed decline to access the safe deposit box. I pictured them, Robert's calculated calm, Elizabeth's nervous glances, walking into the trap we'd built. The bank manager, briefed by Sophia, stalled them, asking for additional ID while discreetly alerting the FBI. The Harpers didn't suspect a thing, their greed blinding them. Elizabeth, ever the actress, spun a sob story about my critical condition, her voice breaking as she begged for access to protect my wishes. Robert backed her up, his charm polished but strained. Lucas sent me updates via Natalie, my heart racing as I lay in bed, unable to move but living every moment. "They're inside," Natalie whispered, her eyes locked on her phone. The FBI was closing in, their agents blending into the bank's morning crowd. The Harpers, oblivious, signed forms under their fake names, their signatures a final nail in their coffin. I imagined the moment they opened the box, expecting to find my letter, their salvation. Instead, they'd face a decoy, a note I'd written saying, "You thought you could erase me, but I see you." The real letter was safe, its copies already with the authorities. Their panic would come too late. Lucas confirmed they'd accessed the box, their faces paling as they read my taunt. Elizabeth clutched Robert's arm, her composure cracking, while he scanned the room, sensing the walls closing in. They'd played their hand, exposing their aliases, their intent, their guilt. The FBI was seconds away, their escape route cut off. Natalie squeezed my hand, her voice soft but triumphant. "They're done, Ava." I closed my eyes, the weight of 31 years lifting just a fraction. The Harpers had raised me, shaped me, but they'd underestimated me. They thought they could outrun their crimes, but my letter, my truth had caught them, and there was no running now. The moment the Harpers opened that safe deposit box, they sealed their fate. Lucas's voice crackled through Natalie's phone, his words clipped and urgent. "FBI's moving in." I lay in my hospital bed, my body still frail but my heart pounding, picturing the scene unfolding at the bank. Robert and Elizabeth clutching my decoy note. "You thought you could erase me, but I see you," froze as FBI agents swarmed the vault. "Robert Harper, Elizabeth Harper, you're under arrest," an agent barked, their voices echoing in the sterile room. Elizabeth gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, while Robert's face hardened, his eyes darting for an exit that didn't exist. Handcuffs clicked, their wrists bound, their carefully crafted aliases useless against the weight of evidence we'd built. The FBI had everything. Elizabeth's journal confessing to my abduction, the bank statement showing offshore transfers, the burner phone call dismissing me as irrelevant, and now their attempt to access my box under false pretenses. They were charged on the spot. Kidnapping, fraud, conspiracy, and attempted theft. Lucas relayed every detail, his voice steady but triumphant. The Harpers were led out in cuffs, Elizabeth's head bowed, Robert's jaw tight, their polished facade shattered for all to see. Bank patrons whispered, cameras flashed, the moment immortalized as the end of their 31-year lie. Back in the hospital, Natalie held my hand, tears in her eyes. "It's over," she said, her voice breaking. But it wasn't over, not yet. The arrest was only the beginning of justice. Sophia Chen, my lawyer, had ensured the real letter, with its notarized copies, was in the hands of prosecutors. It laid bare their crimes, from stealing me in Providence to plotting to flee with my inheritance. The FBI had tracked their Indonesia tickets, their forged passports, their storage unit stuffed with cash and fake IDs. Every move they'd made was documented. Their greed, their downfall. As the news broke, I watched from my hospital TV, the headlines searing, "Brookline couple arrested in decades-old kidnapping case." My name, Ava Monroe, was everywhere, tied to a story that gripped the nation. I felt exposed, raw, but also powerful. I'd brought them down, not with hate, but with truth. The Harpers' interrogation was brutal, Lucas later told me. Elizabeth crumbled, sobbing about needing a fresh start in 1994, claiming they'd loved me in their way. Robert stayed silent, his lawyer scrambling, but the evidence was overwhelming. They faced life sentences, their wealth and charm useless in a cell. For me, the arrest was a release, a chance to breathe after 31 years of lies. But it was also a reckoning. I thought of the Monroes, my real parents, who'd never stopped searching. Lucas had found them in Providence, their lives marked by loss but lit by hope. I wasn't ready to meet them, my heart too bruised, but I sent a message through Sophia, promising a reunion soon. The arrest gave me space to heal, to rebuild. Natalie stayed by me, her loyalty a lifeline, while Evelyn, my nurse, cheered from the sidelines, her kind eyes proud. The letter had done more than trap the Harpers. It had freed me, giving me a voice when they tried to silence me. As I watched their mugshots flash on the screen, I felt no joy, only closure. They'd raised me, but they'd never owned me. My truth, Ava Monroe's truth, was stronger than their lies, and it had brought them to their knees. The world knew my story now, and I was ready to write the next chapter, not as their daughter, but as myself, whole and unbroken, with a family waiting to welcome me home. The arrest of Robert and Elizabeth Harper was a seismic shift, but it left me standing on unfamiliar ground. I was Ava Monroe, not Ava Harper, a truth confirmed by DNA and cemented by their crimes. Yet, knowing I had real parents, Thomas and Maria Monroe, waiting in Providence, Rhode Island, filled me with both hope and dread. I was 32, my body still healing from the crash, my heart raw from betrayal. The idea of reaching out to the Monroes felt like stepping into a void. What if they didn't want me? What if I couldn't be the daughter they'd lost? In my hospital room, with Natalie by my side, I wrestled with the decision. My lawyer, Sophia Chen, had their contact information, gathered by Lucas during the investigation. They've never stopped looking for you, Sophia said, her voice gentle but firm. They deserve to know you're alive. Natalie nodded, her hand squeezing mine. You're not alone in this, Ava. I knew they were right, but fear held me back. Fear of rejection, of opening a wound I couldn't close. Finally, one quiet afternoon, with sunlight filtering through the hospital blinds, I asked Sophia to make the call. She dialed Thomas Monroe's number, putting it on speaker. My heart pounded as it rang, each tone a countdown to a moment that would change everything. A man's voice answered, warm but cautious. Hello. Sophia introduced herself, explaining she represented someone connected to their missing daughter. There was a pause, heavy with decades of pain. Then Thomas's voice cracked. Is she alive? Sophia handed me the phone, my hands trembling. Mr. Monroe, I started, my voice barely a whisper. This is Ava. I think I'm your daughter. The silence that followed was deafening. Then a sob broke through. Ava. My God, Ava. Maria's voice joined, trembling with disbelief. Our baby. Is it really you? I couldn't hold back my tears, their emotion unraveling me. We talked for hours, their words a lifeline across 31 years of separation. They told me about the night I was taken, the crib empty, their world collapsing. They'd searched tirelessly, posting flyers, offering rewards, never losing hope. We prayed for this, Maria said, her voice thick. Every night we prayed. I shared my story. The crash, the Harpers' betrayal, the letter that brought them down. Their anger at the Harpers was fierce, but their love for me was fiercer. We want you home, Thomas said, and I felt a warmth I'd never known. The call ended with a promise to meet, but it left me reeling. I was their daughter, not a trophy or a transaction, but a person they'd loved before I knew myself. Natalie hugged me, her eyes wet. You found your family, she said. I nodded, the weight of betrayal lifting, replaced by a fragile hope. That call was my first step toward home, a bridge to a family I'd never known but already needed. 2 weeks after that call, I was strong enough to leave the hospital, my body patched together but my heart still fragile. The Monroes invited me to their home in Providence, a modest craftsman house just an hour from Boston. Natalie drove me, her presence a steady anchor as I gripped the passenger seat, my nerves electric. What would it feel like to see them? Would I fit into their lives after 31 years? The drive was quiet, the New England autumn painting the trees in fiery reds and golds, a stark contrast to the storm inside me. We pulled into their driveway, and there they were, Thomas and Maria standing on the porch, their faces etched with anticipation. Thomas was tall, his auburn hair graying, his green eyes mirroring mine. Maria was smaller, her dark curls framing a face worn by grief but lit with hope. I stepped out, my cane wobbling, and before I could speak, Maria rushed forward, enveloping me in a hug. My baby, she whispered, her tears soaking my shoulder. Thomas joined, his arms strong, his voice breaking. You're home, Ava. I clung to them, my own tears falling, the weight of a stolen life dissolving in their embrace. We moved inside, the house warm with the scent of fresh bread and coffee. Photos lined the walls, me as an infant, then age-progressed images they'd commissioned, eerily accurate. We never stopped imagining you, Maria said, her hand on mine. They showed me my old nursery, preserved like a shrine, its crib still draped in a faded quilt. I touched it, a memory I couldn't grasp but felt in my bones. Over lunch we talked, our words tentative at first, then flowing. Thomas shared stories of his carpentry business, Maria of her work as a librarian. They asked about my life, my biotech career, my love for painting, my fight to survive. Their pride was raw, unburdened by expectation, so different from the Harpers' control. I told them about Natalie, my chosen sister, who smiled from across the table. She's why I'm here, I said, and Maria hugged her, calling her family too. The day wasn't perfect. There were awkward pauses, questions too painful to ask, but it was real. Thomas gave me a locket, one they'd bought for my first birthday, its tiny photo of them now pressed against my heart. As we said goodbye, Maria held my face, her eyes fierce. "You're ours, Ava. Always were." I nodded, unable to speak, the locket warm against my chest. Driving back, Natalie glanced at me. "How do you feel?" I smiled, tears blurring the road. Like I belong somewhere. That meeting wasn't just a reunion. It was a reclaiming, a chance to be the daughter I was meant to be. Loved not for what I could do, but for who I was. The Monroes weren't strangers. They were home, and I was ready to build a life with them. The Monroes became my anchor, their love a quiet force that reshaped my world. After our first meeting, we built a bond slowly, with phone calls, visits, and shared moments that filled the gaps of 31 years. Thomas taught me to sand wood in his workshop, his patient hands guiding mine, our laughter easing the pain of lost time. Maria shared her favorite books, her voice soft as we read together, her library a haven where I felt safe. They never pushed, never demanded, but their presence was constant, a love I'd never known with the Harpers. Holidays were transformed. Thanksgiving at their table, surrounded by aunts, uncles, and cousins who welcomed me like I'd never been gone. I saw myself in them, in their gestures, their laughter, a mirror of belonging I'd craved my whole life. Natalie joined us, her bond with the Monroes as real as mine, proof that family isn't just blood. I started painting again, my canvases alive with colors the Harpers had dismissed. Maria hung my first piece in their living room, her pride brighter than any trophy. Through it all, I carried the locket, its photo a reminder of their unwavering hope. The Harpers' betrayal had broken me, but the Monroes' love rebuilt me, not as a project, but as a daughter. I wasn't whole yet. Grief lingered, scars ached, but I was healing, rooted in a family that saw me, truly saw me. That bond gave me strength to face the future, to live not just for justice, but for joy. The Monroes were my home, and I was theirs forever. The arrest of Robert and Elizabeth Harper was a turning point, but it didn't erase the scars they'd left. At 32, I was Ava Monroe, a name reclaimed from a stolen past, yet my body and heart bore the weight of 31 years of lies. Leaving the hospital was a victory, but recovery was a battle. My injuries from the 2022 crash, fractured femur, shattered pelvis, ruptured spleen, demanded months of physical therapy. Each step with my cane was a fight, my muscles screaming, but I pushed through, driven by a fire the Harpers couldn't extinguish. Natalie, my chosen sister, was my rock, cheering every milestone, from my first unaided step to my return to my Cambridge condo. Emotionally, the wounds were deeper. The Harpers' betrayal, calling me not their real daughter, abandoning me to die, haunted my nights, their voices echoing in dreams. I started therapy, unpacking decades of conditional love and suppressed dreams. My therapist, Dr. Patel, helped me see I wasn't defined by their greed. "You survived, Ava," she said. "That's your power." I leaned on the Monroes, my real parents, whose love was a balm. Thomas's quiet strength, Maria's warm hugs, grounded me. They didn't replace the pain but gave me a foundation to rebuild. Justice moved forward, a slow but relentless tide. The Harpers' trial gripped the nation, their polished facade crumbling under the weight of evidence. Elizabeth's journal confessing my 1994 abduction, their offshore accounts, their attempt to flee with my inheritance. Sophia Chen, my lawyer, was fierce, presenting my letter, a notarized indictment of their crimes, to the court. I testified, my voice steady despite trembling hands, recounting their hospital betrayal, their decades of manipulation. The jury didn't waver. Robert and Elizabeth were convicted of kidnapping, fraud, and conspiracy, sentenced to life without parole. Standing outside the courthouse, cameras flashing, I felt no joy, only closure. The world knew my truth. and the Harpers couldn't hurt me anymore. I used my inheritance to secure my future, donating a portion to child abduction prevention programs, a way to honor the Monroes' loss. Painting became my refuge, my canvases bursting with colors the Harpers had once dismissed. I hung my first piece in my condo, a swirling abstract of reds and blues, a testament to my survival. Recovery wasn't linear. Grief ambushed me, doubts lingered, but each day I grew stronger. Natalie, the Monroes, even Evelyn, my hospital nurse, formed a family not bound by blood but by choice. They saw me not as a trophy or an asset, but as Ava, whole and enough. The Harpers had tried to break me, but I was healing, not just surviving but thriving, ready to live a life they could never touch. Healing wasn't just personal, it was a call to action. The pain of my abduction, the Harpers' greed, and the Monroes' decades of grief fueled a purpose bigger than myself. In 2024, at 33, I founded the Ava Monroe Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to preventing child abductions and supporting families torn apart by loss. My $4.5 million inheritance became its seed, a way to transform my suffering into hope. Based in Providence, near my parents' home, the foundation partnered with law enforcement, schools, and communities to educate parents on safety, fund advanced tracking technologies, and provide counseling for families of missing children. I poured my biotech expertise into it, collaborating with engineers to develop affordable GPS devices for kids, discreet bracelets that could save lives. The foundation's first event, a safety fair in Providence, drew hundreds, Maria and Thomas by my side, their pride brighter than the summer sun. We distributed free bracelets, trained parents on alert systems, and shared my story, not as a victim but as a survivor. The response was overwhelming. Letters from families, thanking us for giving them tools to protect their kids, poured in. One mother, whose son had wandered off but was found thanks to our bracelet, hugged me, tears in her eyes. "You gave me my world back," she said. Those moments made the sleepless nights, the endless grant proposals, worth it. Natalie joined the board, her organizational skills keeping us grounded, while Sophia Chan advised on legal advocacy, pushing for stricter laws against child trafficking. The foundation wasn't just work, it was healing. Every child we protected, every family we supported, chipped away at the Harpers' legacy of harm. I named it after myself, not out of vanity, but to reclaim Ava Monroe, to give her a voice they'd tried to silence. The Monroes were its heart, their resilience inspiring our mission. Maria volunteered, reading to kids at our events, while Thomas built furniture for our office, his craftsmanship a quiet act of love. The foundation grew, with chapters opening in Boston and New York, but its core remained personal, a promise to ensure no child endured what I had, no parent suffered like the Monroes. It was my way of turning pain into power, of building a legacy not of betrayal, but of hope. The Harpers had stolen my past, but through the foundation, I was shaping a future where love and safety prevailed. At 33, I stand at a crossroads, no longer defined by the Harpers' lies but shaped by my truth. The future is a canvas, and I'm painting it with bold strokes. I'm still with the Monroes, our bond deepening with every shared meal, every quiet moment. Thomas and Maria are my home, their love a constant light. Natalie remains my sister, her laughter my anchor. I'm dating now, cautiously, learning to trust in ways the Harpers never taught me. My biotech career thrives, my research into cancer therapies a quiet passion, but painting is my soul's language, my art shown in local galleries, colors telling stories of survival. The Ava Monroe Foundation is my legacy, growing stronger, saving lives, healing wounds. I dream of expanding it nationwide, of meeting more families like mine, of ensuring no child is stolen. The Harpers' trial is behind me, their life sentences a closed chapter, but their shadow lingers, a reminder to stay vigilant. I visit the Monroe's nursery sometimes, touching the quilt, feeling the girl I was and the woman I've become. I'm not whole, scars remain, grief ebbs and flows, but I'm enough. The future holds weddings, maybe children, laughter with cousins, holidays filled with love. I'll keep fighting not just for me but for every stolen child, every broken family. My letter brought down the Harpers, but my life, my joy, is my true revenge. I'm Ava Monroe, daughter, survivor, dreamer, and I'm ready to live fully, fiercely, free. My name is Ava Monroe, and my story is one of betrayal, survival, and redemption. The Harpers stole me, raised me on lies, and left me to die for my inheritance. But I fought back not with hate but with truth. A letter exposed their crimes, reunited me with my real family, and gave me a purpose. I was 33 when I stood up, scars and all, to reclaim my life. The Monroes, Thomas and Maria, taught me love isn't a transaction. It's a gift given freely, fiercely. Natalie, my chosen sister, showed me loyalty that outshines blood. The Ava Monroe Foundation became my vow. No child should be stolen, no family broken like mine. Every GPS bracelet we distribute, every parent we educate, is a step toward a world where kids are safe. My paintings, once hidden, now hang in galleries, colors shouting my survival. The Harpers are gone, locked away forever, but their shadow reminds me to stay vigilant. I'm not just a survivor. I'm a dreamer, a daughter, a fighter. My story isn't unique. Countless children are still missing, families still searching. But hope is stronger than despair. You don't need an inheritance or a letter to change the world. Just courage to act. My journey taught me that truth can break chains, that love can heal wounds, that one voice can spark change. This isn't the end of my story. It's a beginning, and it's not just mine, it's ours. Together we can protect the vulnerable, reunite the lost, and build a future where every child comes home. You've heard my story, now it's time to act. The Ava Monroe Foundation is fighting to keep kids safe, but we can't do it alone. Every child deserves to grow up loved, not stolen. Every family deserves peace, not pain. You can make a difference right now. Visit avamonroefoundation.org to learn how. Donate to fund GPS bracelets that track kids in real time, saving lives before they're lost. Volunteer at our safety fairs, teaching parents to protect their children. Share our mission on social media. Use #FindThemHome to spread the word. Even a small act like signing up for our newsletter keeps you connected to a movement that's changing lives. Your support isn't just a number. It's a lifeline for families like mine. Look at the screen, see those faces. They're missing children, waiting for their Monroes, their Ava. Your action could bring them home. If you're a survivor, know you're not alone. Share your story at our website. Your voice can inspire others. To my supporters, Natalie, Sophia, Lucas, Evelyn, and the Monroes, thank you for giving me strength. To you watching, thank you for listening. This isn't just a story. It's a call. Join us. Protect a child. Heal a family. Together, we can stop the Harpers of the world before they strike. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of hope and action. Follow us at Truth Unlocks Stories. Let's build a world where love wins. The screen shows our website, our hotline, our mission. Now, be the change. For every child, for every family, for a future where no one's left behind. I'm Ava Monroe, and I believe in you.